Hey guys, Joe here. I want to thank you guys all for listening to this. This is a special type of podcast because this is a Podcast by Joe branded podcast. The podcast you're about to listen to is called Potions Class, and this is brought to you by Elliot Lowe. Elliot is one of my friends and a very, very, very smart science guy, and you'll hear much more about him in this podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. We have a bunch of other branded podcasts as well that are either out now or in the works that are coming soon. So yeah, thank you so much. Remember, if you need anything or would like to work with us and you like what you hear, go to podcastbyjoe.com or send me an email at podcastbyjoe@gmail.com. Thank you so much and enjoy the podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Potions Class. My name is Joe Ennis and I am the founder of Podcasts by Joe. Like I said before the intro, all of these podcasts are just a Podcast by Joe branded podcast where, you know, I have a bunch of my friends and people that I know well and I respect and trust to speak their mind on different topics. And this is the first one that we are doing with my friend Elliot Lowe. Hello, Elliot.
Hello,
welcome.
Joe. Thank you for starting us up, I guess.
Yeah, no problem. So the idea of this podcast, obviously it's called Potions Class. It's kind of just like a goofy name that I thought of when I think of, we used to be told in high school that potions in chemistry that it was called Potions Class by our principal who taught it. And so I was like, hey, it's kind of funny. It's a funny name for a science podcast, so we're sticking with it. So this podcast is really more about, you know, scientific research and studies, which you are very involved with and do a lot about, and it's pretty much your career, correct?
Yeah. At this point, I guess it's fair to say it is my career, and I agreed that Potions Class was going to be a good title for this because as opposed to diving into these sort of deep scientific topics and using a lot of the lingo that we might hear working in the profession or at the college level, we definitely wanted to make these concepts and these issues that we talk about, tackle them down, sort of pin them down in a way that anyone can understand, because that's something I do firmly believe is that science and biology in particular, is my focus, is not as complicated as it's made to seem when you look at the lingo, when you look at the terminology that's used within the field itself. So you're completely
different from me because I don't understand anything about biology or chemistry. I did both. I did awful in both of those classes, but Elliot is also one of my roommates, and I hear all the time all the science lingo, and I have no idea what he's talking about, but I'm hoping that I'll be on this podcast every once in a while, and I'm hoping that I can learn a lot in a way that, is kind of, not dumbed down, but, it's something that I can understand and I can consume and understand.
In no way is this going to be dumbed down material. It's just going to, I feel like when you're working with these things or when you're speaking with people who interact with them or have some sort of background knowledge that might be more than you learned in high school or a class in college, it can get very easy to kind of drift into a dense vocabulary,
right?
That is just confusing. The concepts themselves, I don't think, are very confusing, and that's what we definitely want to do with this podcast. What I'm definitely hoping as a vision for the podcast is kind of not dumbing it down, but just toning down the vocabulary and explaining everything in a way that everyone can be a part of the conversation.
Right. Yeah, and so I chose you to do Potions Class, to run Potions Class, because of kind of obviously your background in it and your passion for it. Tell everyone kind of a little bit about yourself, what you're doing now, and
Absolutely. Yeah. So I had pretty much decided by the time that I graduated high school, I'd say about a year before I graduated high school, that I wanted to go into some sort of biological research for a career. I loved biology, general bio. I took AP Bio in high school, and at that time I was like, I love this. This is something I could definitely see myself doing as a career. I have a real passion for it. So I went to Towson University, got my degree there in molecular biology and chemistry, did my minor in comp sci. So technically the degree was MB3, so it's molecular bio, biochemistry, bioinformatics, and then you choose a specialization. So I did molecular bio. While I was in undergrad at Towson, I did work in a biochemistry lab, working with recombinant immunotoxins. Did a little bit of work there with that. Got a poster, went down to Orlando and presented at the
that was cool.
American Society for Molecular Bio and Biochemistry. And at that point, I really was kind of like, okay, I like this environment. I enjoy interacting with these people. I enjoy being a part of this ongoing discovery. And one thing that I really kind of found while I was at that conference is like, you're at the forefront of these things. These things are all new. They're new, radical ideas, pressing the limit of what we know about science forward. And I was really excited to be a part of that. So I used part of what I did in undergrad to apply to this program at NIH called the Undergraduate Scholars Program. Fantastic program. Ended up getting accepted into there and started immediately after graduation working over in NCI, doing some work with osteosarcoma, and then had a transition due to interest change, and I'm now over at the National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Diseases, and I work in a vector-borne illness lab. So I'm currently at NIH as a postbac, and I've got about another year there before I'm going on to a graduate program, and I think finally started to settle in. I want to go into emerging infectious diseases.
That's awesome. I bet we'll hear about coronavirus some point in this podcast.
Yeah, so I was thinking actually for the first episode, it's definitely a conversation that you hear not a ton at work. We'll touch on it a little bit. I think in the first episode, I'd like to do just kind of a recap on what we've learned so far and what we're seeing so far, and kind of helping understand how the media hype has led to people's perspectives maybe being altered a little bit on the extreme side when it comes to the coronavirus.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think coronavirus has been, would you say that it has been blown out of proportion, or would you say that it's fair to be somewhat concerned?
So here's the thing.
Without getting super into it yet.
Yeah, because we'll tackle that.
Right.
There are much bigger issues that I feel like we do a very poor job in our current medical climate. I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this. I think that there are a lot of issues that are much more troubling than coronavirus that are not nearly given the amount of public attention that they deserve. For example, the flu has infected, I think it's around 12 million people in 2019 in the USA. I mean, we can check that number and chop this out if that's wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's around.
Something like that.
I looked some is up there. 12 million. That's a lot. And the public awareness as far as the flu goes is nowhere near the amount of outrage that the coronavirus has gotten on social media.
Well, we seem to not really care about it as much because we have a somewhat of a, I don't even want to say cure, but something that will at least fight against it.
We have vaccines that have been developed, but I think coronavirus is novel, and in that sense, it's easy to incite fear, and there's a lot of fear of the unknown. And when that happens, speculation kind of runs amok. So without going into too much more detail about it, in the first episode, what I'd like to cover is kind of a breakdown of here's what we know, here are the facts, and here's what you can do in order to kind of, keep your head on straight about it while we're going through it, because we're going to be going through it.
Cool. So we can expect that coming very soon. Actually, by the time that this episode is posted, that episode will be posted as well. So
there we go.
Go and listen to that one right after this.
So if you want to know more about coronavirus and see what the hype is all about, give the next episode a listen for sure.
So what other things are you planning on tackling other than just coronavirus?
Yeah, so I've given a little bit of thought to it. I've spoken with a couple people that I was an undergrad with who are currently doing cool research, and some people I work with now. We'll probably be getting some of them on the show for special guest slots, just to give us kind of like their thoughts on something that they're working on and kind of bring it into the public eye in a way that maybe it wouldn't if it was just in some sort of publication. On top of that, I recently read this book on caffeine, which I'm going to be doing a two-part series, and we'll see how it ends up breaking out.
Cool.
But on sort of the role that caffeine has played in the development of different cultural aspects in humanity, and then another sort of deeper dive into the biological function of caffeine and how that started as a insecticide from plants.
Awesome.
And
Just so that we're clear, and just in case people weren't thinking this before, which I assume most would be, not a lot of, or most of what they're going to hear from this is coming from research. This isn't just your opinion on things.
No, yeah. So, yeah, for sure. This is something that I do have to get out of the way, as I am currently employed by NIH, that none of these thoughts that come up, none of these talks that we're having are going to be in any way related to the NIH. This is not going to be voiced by the NIH. This is not of the NIH's opinion. These are solely my opinions, my voice expressed. That being said, I don't like to speculate a whole lot, and I don't like to feed into
you don't like assuming
things.
I
don't like to feed into assumptions when we talk about science. So anything that we talk about in this show, I'm going to do my best to put links with. You can go look up the research yourself. I definitely want to be transparent as far as all of that goes, and I think that it's important that if you're going to share facts and share stuff like that, that you should definitely be providing people the opportunity and the ability to look that up themselves and do the deep dive.
Awesome. Yeah, man. Well, we're really excited to keep going and see where this goes. I'm really pumped about this one. We have a bunch of different podcasts that we're going to be doing at the same time for Podcast by Joe, but this one I'm really excited for, just because it's such an interesting thing, and you seem to have so many big plans for it. So I'm really excited to see where it goes. Thanks for coming on, man, and wanting to do this. Obviously, everyone, if you want to work with us, go to podcastbyjoe.com. You can email me at podcastbyjoe@gmail.com if you have any questions for me or for Elliot. And if go on and keep listening to the rest of these. Obviously, the coronavirus episodes will be posted, or at least one or two of them will be posted now. So make sure you go and keep listening to this, and subscribe to the podcast and like the podcast and do all that stuff. Anything else you want to say before we close this?
No, I'm super excited to kind of go on this journey with you and with everyone, and let's dive into some really fun topics. I think it's gonna be a great time.
Awesome. Yeah, me too. All right, man.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.